They laughed at him, calling him too old to work. But when the truth came out, everyone in that Burger King was left speechless. Gary Thompson adjusted his Burger King cap, wiping sweat from his forehead. At 62 years old, he was one of the oldest employees in the fast food restaurant, working long shifts just to make ends meet. He didn't complain. He didn't have a choice. But today was different. As he handed a tray of food to a customer, he heard loud laughter coming from a booth near the counter. Teenagers. 4 of them dressed in expensive sneakers and designer hoodies, whispering and smirking in his direction. "Dude, look at that old guy working the register. Isn't he supposed to be retired? Imagine flipping burgers at his age." One of them laughed loudly on purpose. "Hey, Grandpa, messed up your retirement plan?" The other customers shifted uncomfortably. Gary felt his face heat up, but he didn't say a word. Instead, he forced a small smile and kept working. But just then, a deep voice rang out from across the restaurant. "That old guy is worth more than all of you combined." The entire restaurant fell silent. Everyone turned toward the voice, and when they saw who it was, the teenagers' faces turned pale. Because the man standing there was someone they never expected. The moment that changed everything. The man who had spoken stepped forward, his presence commanding the room. Tall, well-dressed, and exuding authority, he walked straight toward the teenagers, his eyes locked onto them. One of the boys stammered, "Who are you?" The man smirked. "I'm the owner of this Burger King franchise, and that old guy you're mocking. He's the reason this place even exists." The teenagers froze. Murmurs spread through the restaurant. People leaned in, eager to hear what was happening. The owner turned toward Gary, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Meet Gary Thompson. He's not just an employee. He's the man who built this business from the ground up." The teenagers exchanged nervous glances. The owner continued. 30 years ago, Gary owned several Burger King locations across the state. He was one of the best businessmen I ever knew. A gasp rippled through the restaurant. Gary shifted uncomfortably. He never liked attention. One of the teenagers, now visibly embarrassed, mumbled, "Then, why is he working here now?" The owner sighed, looking at Gary with deep respect. "Because life isn't always fair." He turned back to the crowd. "Gary lost everything when his wife got sick. He sold his businesses to pay for her treatments. When she passed, he was left with nothing. Instead of giving up, he came back here, to the place he built, to start over." The restaurant fell silent. The teenagers looked down, ashamed of their words. Gary cleared his throat, his voice quiet but steady. "I don't mind working hard. I don't need pity. But I sure don't need to be mocked either." One of the teenagers hesitated before speaking. "We're sorry, sir." Gary nodded, accepting the apology. But the owner, he wasn't finished. He turned to Gary, smiling. "You know, I've been meaning to ask you something." Gary frowned. "Ask me what?" The owner pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and placed it on the counter. Gary unfolded it, his hands shaking as he read the words. "Partnership Agreement, Burger King Franchise." His breath caught. "Wait, what is this?" The owner grinned. "I'm giving you back what you built, Gary. You're not just an employee anymore. You're my business partner." Gasps filled the restaurant. Gary's hands trembled. I can't accept this." The owner squeezed his shoulder. "You earned this, my friend, and it's about time you take your place where you belong." Tears welled in Gary's eyes. The teenagers watched in stunned silence. They had come in mocking a man for working at his age. Now, they were watching him become the owner. And as Gary shook the owner's hand, the lesson was clear. Never judge someone by where they are today, because you never know the battles they fought or the greatness they once held. 1 month later, the sign outside the Burger King location had changed. Instead of just reading Burger King, it now had one more line beneath it. owned and operated by Gary Thompson. Inside, the energy was different. Employees worked with more pride, customers greeted Gary with smiles, and the teenagers who had once mocked him. They came back. But this time, not to laugh. They walked up to the counter, heads low. One of them, Jason, cleared his throat. "Mr. Thompson?" Gary turned, arching an eyebrow. "Back again?" Jason swallowed. "Yeah, we wanted to say thank you. And—" Another boy, Tyler, stepped forward. "We were wondering if you were hiring." Gary stared at them for a moment, then smirked. "You want to work here?" Jason nodded. "We want to learn what it means to work hard. And we want to learn from you." The other two boys quickly added, "We'll do whatever it takes." Gary exhaled, rubbing his chin. He could have turned them away. He could have reminded them of the insults, but instead, he smiled. "All right, you start Monday." Their faces lit up. "Really?" Gary nodded. "Just remember, respect matters. Work hard, show kindness, and you'll go far." They all shook his hand, now looking up to the very man they had once mocked. From a struggling employee to an owner once again, Gary had reclaimed his life, and in the process, he had taught an unforgettable lesson to an entire generation. Because success isn't just about where you are, it's about who you are. And no matter how life knocks you down, it's never too late to rise again. 1 year later. The once ordinary Burger King location was now the most popular in the city, not just because of its food, but because of its story. Customers came from all over, not just to eat, but to meet the man who proved that resilience and hard work never go unnoticed. Gary Thompson, now back in his rightful place as a business owner, stood proudly behind the counter, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. And the teenagers who had once mocked him, they were now his best employees. Jason, the boy who had laughed at Gary the loudest, was now shift supervisor. One afternoon, as the lunch rush settled down, Jason walked over, wiping his hands on his apron. "Mr. Thompson?" Gary smirked. "What's up, kid?" Jason took a deep breath. "I just wanted to say, I wouldn't be the person I am today if I hadn't walked into this restaurant a year ago." Gary nodded. "People change, Jason. That's what life is about." Jason hesitated before pulling something from his pocket, a small card. "This is for you." Gary took it, flipping it open. Inside was a handwritten note. "Thank you for teaching me more than any school ever could. I hope one day I can be half the man you are." Gary's throat tightened. He wasn't a man who cried often, but this got to him. He patted Jason on the shoulder. "You're already on your way, kid." As he looked around the restaurant, at his employees, at the happy customers, at the life he had rebuilt, he realized something. The biggest success wasn't getting his business back. It was proving that no matter what happens in life, you can always rise again. And that was worth more than any fortune. 5 years later, the once small Burger King location had now become a local legend. But today, something even bigger was happening. Gary Thompson stood on a grand stage in front of hundreds of people, employees, business leaders, and community members. Behind him, a massive screen displayed the words, "The Thompson Initiative, Second Chances in the Workplace." Gary cleared his throat and spoke into the microphone. 5 years ago, I was just another man flipping burgers. Some laughed at me, others looked down on me. But I kept working, because that's all I knew how to do. The audience listened in silence. But what I learned is that hard work alone isn't always enough. Sometimes people just need a second chance. And today, I'm here to make sure others get theirs. The screen changed, revealing the details of his new initiative, a training program for older workers struggling to find employment, scholarships for young employees to pursue education and career growth, a hire with dignity policy, ensuring that experience, not age, determines opportunity. The crowd erupted in applause. Among them, Jason, Tyler, and the other former teenagers who once mocked him. Now, they were running their own businesses, using the lessons Gary had taught them. Jason, now a successful entrepreneur, stepped forward. "Mr. Thompson, I think I speak for everyone when I say you changed our lives." Gary chuckled. "Well, kid, you all changed mine too." As the event ended, Gary looked out at the faces in the crowd, realizing something important. His story wasn't just about getting his business back. It was about giving others the same second chance he had been given. Because success, it's not just about where you end up. It's about how many people you help along the way.